welcome to our session today. My name is Patricia Dárez. I'm the director of 350 Renewables, which is a boutique consultancy delivering technical advice via senior experts for renewable energy projects, and our market niche is Latin America at the moment. I'm here with Gil Lizcano. He's well known because he has been the R&D director for Vortex for the last 12 years. Vortex has been one of the companies, if not the first company, to be very strong proponents of the use of mesoscale reanalysis data for the purpose of wind resource analysis. Gil is also a co-founder of Climate Scale, which is a new innovative venture which is taking data to the next level for wind resource analysis. They're offering high-resolution climate data for climate change risk and assessment.
Thanks, Patricia. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and to talk to you and to talk to the audience about this really amazing topic that is how climate change affect the wind resource and the wind industry. And as we have already discussed before, this session is more a dialogue between you and I, because we both work for the wind industry. I am more on the data side and you more on putting some context and some intelligence to this data. So let's make this more a conversation between both.
Perfect.
And now that you gave some context, I would like to ask you why the name of your company, 350 Renewables, because I think it makes a lot of context in this session.
Yeah, so 350, it's an important number in the context of climate change. Most of us, we're aware of the Paris Agreement, and we know that we're trying to limit warming to 1.5 to 2 degrees, hopefully, but that is a number that comes into the future. An indicator of how we're doing today is the ppm, the concentration of CO2 in parts per million in the atmosphere, and 350 is the number of ppm in the atmosphere that back in 2008 a group of climate scientists set as an interim target. The sort of background of this is if humanity wishes to preserve a planet similar to what we have at the moment and on which civilization developed. So current levels of CO2 in the atmosphere are around 400 ppm. So this is a nice number that we need to work to at present today. So we need to go from 400 ppm to 350. So we like to remind everyone about this with the name of our company. How do you think climate change is impacting the wind regimes that we're seeing at the moment? What evidence have we seen to date?
Yes, this is a very important question that my answer is going to be very obvious. The answer is there is no obvious answer. So, of course, we know that for the wind resource, there has been some discussions whether there are some trends over the last 40 years. There has been some publication on that, on this kind of decline and signal of the wind. Disentangling the effects of anthropogenic climate change and internal variability is not easy in general. In the case of the wind, this is particularly difficult because the climate signal is not large enough and the observational record is really short. We are really specialists on understanding the variability of the wind year to year is now to integrate a larger picture. So the context of this climate variability by cycles of the wind, and also changes due to climate change. So we know the trees, we need to understand the forest. What is the perception that you have that how the industry you think is factoring the climate change at the moment?
I think, my perception about how the industry is factoring climate data. So I think we have made some big methodology improvements in the areas of wind assessments, but mostly these have been on, wake models, mesoscale, or using models or reanalysis data. We using more CFD now. We're quantifying uncertainties differently from what we used to do a few years ago. And of course, the technology has improved, but yet we continue to use the recent past as a good predictor of the future, when there are a number of indicators that are telling us that this is not a very good indicator, or this is becoming a worse and worse indicator. So my opinion is that this is one of the things that we're going to have to look at. This is coming. We're going to have to work on this, and we already know that there are associated risks relating to climate change, we are starting to get clients asking for it, which is a very good sign. But I think in general, the industry are finding it difficult to quantify this variable or factor in the risk assessment. So this should be part of our strategy for climate change adaptation. And this is a process that the industry needs to go through. From my point of view, how would you say that climate change is affecting, I guess, our models and our ability to forecast?
First, I think it's important to make the difference between decadal and climate change, decadal predictions and climate change. What is going to happen in the next few years? Probably is the question that everyone would like to answer, especially when the wind farm is in operation. And what is the impact of climate change in the long term? So we based our analysis on accepting that the last 20 years are representative of what is going to happen in the future. But we are aware that what is going to happen in the future is changing. One thing that people maybe will say, okay, these climate projections are very uncertainty. These models has a lot of bias, but I don't think this is the problem. The uncertainty and bias of these models, of these projections, is not a problem if you are aware of this. If you know the limits of your data, you are set. So I think it's the moment now that we need to integrate to make our predictions of the energy for a wind farm, to integrate this vision that things are going to change and to discuss. So there are this climate data that are available, CMIP, Vortex, many national rounds. There's now a growing climate services ecosystems. And so the data are there. So that's what we need is to understand how to work with this data, to make our assessment much more robust. And I see like two big schools, let's say one that's want to use this data to get some likelihoods, so some kind of easy to get, robust interpretation of the impact of climate change. So you have like a very high level analysis of what could happen to the wind, for instance, or other variables. But along with the likelihoods, it's very important as well to think in the plausibility that things are going to become different. So we need to see what could happen, because sometimes what's the future will be is not just looking to the most probable, but the one that are less probable, but it has higher impact in our field or in our applications. Understanding this plausibility scenarios is very important, because at the end, managing the risks posed by the best and worst case scenarios can really help us understand the vulnerabilities and to develop robust adaptation pathways.
I get the feeling that you're super comfortable and quite confident in the data. So the next question is going kind of to check a bit on what do you think are the limits or the frontiers in the field that we need to explore further, or perhaps that where is the limit that we're going to find there?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is first everything that is related to the science, the climate science, and I'm not going to go into that, because first I'm not the person that should tell us what is the limits of what is the frontiers of the climate science. There are experts there. I, for instance, recommend you a very interesting talk that Björk Stevens from the Max Planck Institute of Meteorology has made recently in a supercomputing conference. We really talk the story of all the climate science and climate change modeling development until where we are now, and basically what he really prone on his vision is that, okay, we reach the moment that now is the time, with all the technology we have to model the climate, so the data, the interpretation of the data is the time to interrogate this data and to interrogate ourselves. What is the implication of this, what information we get? So for me, the frontiers is to explore, basically, to explore what the climate projections, with all the caveats, the limits, that, as I said, if you know the limits of this data, you are safe, and make ours this projection. So it's the moment for us to build the methods that we can use to improve our understanding of the impact of climate being different from what we think. So obviously there is a lot of trial and error, But it's the time to explore this data with our own vision, the vision of people working for the wind industry, for instance. No? We play with the data, go there and check the climate projection from someone. Oh, sorry.
Relax, it's fine.
It's not for the timing. How you see as a consultant, what are the gaps in assessing the climate change, on getting this information, for instance, in the due diligence or energy project analysis, for instance?
Yeah, maybe let's say to start with that I agree we should explore more and be more playful and less worried about just trying new things and new methodologies to see how we can improve what we're doing. I think often as a consultant there are very strong time constraints related to projects, and it's it's important that we make the time in our routine to actually look at the bigger picture. I think there should be, in general, more concern from all parts of the industry, and I mean with these developers, operators, consultants, and especially investors, in trying to understand and quantify, what changes in wind regimes and what impact climate change is having and will have in the future. I don't see I don't see sufficient concern about it. I think, like I said earlier, I think we continue to use the past as a good predictor of the future, and we have a number of indicators that tell us that this is not how it's going to work. So I think renewable energy plants that are built today are likely to have a 30-year timeline. This will take us to 2050, and in 2050 we would expect to see a significant part of the world to be carbon neutral, and we will also expect to see the effects of climate change to be a lot more evidence than what we're seeing today. So I think it's important that we make the time to do this work and to explore new methodologies. Espera. ¿Te hago la pregunta?
Sí.
Vale, listo. Okay, so do you think that climate change physical risk disclosure is going to become mandatory everywhere in the future?
Well, it's actually becoming mandatory in many places, and more will be there in the list very soon. No? We know that New Zealand, Japan, UK, Canada, France has already implemented this request. It is mandatory reporting. And more importantly, there is an expectation for leading investors that this closing climate-related physical and transitional risk will become mandatory really in the near future. The European Union is working on that, and big players in the finance sector like Standard & Poor's are already integrating climate scenarios with finance data to estimate the impact of climate change. So the need and the demand of this report, it will be there, and a wind farm is part of the assets that should be as well assessed in terms of climate change risks. This is really something that the industry needs to know, and you as a wind analyst, we will soon have to respond to this need of information, and that's why we need to look for data and look for standards.
Yeah, wind farms are, after all, essential infrastructure because they are generating electricity.
Yeah, I would love to keep talking with you for a while, but just to finish with something that is really, I think, the key question that is, how can we have our own standard recommendations?
Oh. Yeah. So how can we have our own standard or recommendation as an industry? So the difficulty always starts with being able to validate the models to assess climate change in our wind analysis and to be able to quantify that. So I think for that, the first step is hopefully to see the widespread use and verifying the data that we have, the evidence we have, giving it some time, and then verifying the predictions that we're making with the new methodologies. So say if we use climate scale or similar sort of data to make predictions into the future, and then compare or check if those predictions that we've made are good. But on the wider picture, I think we also need to start talking about this without the fear towards uncertainty, because I think at the moment we're only looking at this somewhat tangentially, and we should, this is a problem that we should tackle head on. And once we can do that, we will be in a good position to build a consensus within the industry and to agree on a methodology from the different actors across the spectrum. That would be my very wide roadmap.
So there is still room for trial and error until we get this consensus, no? So
definitely. Well, I think we're right at the beginning of the road, and I hope that there will be a lot more development in the next few years.
Thanks a lot, Patricia. It was really a great experience, and I hope this has been also useful for the people watching.
Thank you, Gil. It was nice to have a northern to southern hemisphere interview for a change.
Yes, hello to Chile.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
Espérate que cómo dejo de grabar esto. Ya, ahí.